In this video, we're gonna be learning everything about gimbals, essentially how to gimbal, from setting it up correctly to awesome shots that you can get with a gimbal to create a cinematic video. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we have to balance the camera onto the gimbal, and as you can see here, I've got it nice and balanced already. I'm gonna ruin it, so it's horrendously balanced and there's no way you can get the camera on it without being, well, why the bug go to my ear? I'll show you guys how to actually properly balance a camera on your gimbal so that you can have it go in any direction and it's not going to like upset the gimbal. We've got the tilt, the roll, and the pan axis, and all three need to be, all these bugs, all three need to be perfectly balanced, or more or less perfectly balanced, so that the gimbal can operate as well as it can with your camera. This little part that your camera attaches to, you want to have it so that your right side of the camera is as close to the tilt axis as possible. It makes the whole payload smaller, and then you don't have to do as much with the roll motor balance as you would if you had it more out to the left. We can see, oh, it falls all the way forward, so that means we have to bring it backwards. So I will unlock here the axis and I'll bring the camera back. It's falling backwards, so I've gone too far. A little game of like forwards and backwards. Tilt axis is like two-part. That's the first part. Now we need to tilt the camera up, and if it stays perfectly still, you're good. I'm good. Sometimes it may tilt forwards or backwards, and with that, there's like a second locking point that you can adjust here. So actually, if I were to mess that up, right, you can see, oh, now it's gonna tilt backwards, so I have to push it forwards, and vice versa. But I forgot to mess that up before I started this video, so hey, there you go. If you're finding it hard to adjust the position, just actually grab the camera from underneath, push it up a bit, lift it up a bit. That'll take the weight off of the locking area, and then it makes it easier to move the whole thing. But yeah, now I'd say that's pretty much like perfectly balanced for that axis anyway. Now we go into the roll axis. It's very much off. Unlock it. If it's falling to the left, you want to bring it to the right. It's still falling to the left. Now I also know I'm gonna have the screen out when I'm using the gimbal, so I'm gonna bring that out to bring the center of gravity to exactly where it's going to be when I'm using the camera, using the gimbal, and that's, you know, it's pretty good. With the roll axis, it's not gonna be the case of like you put it here and it stays perfectly still. What you care about is that if you have it centered, that it doesn't then roll to the left or to the right. You just wanna make sure it stays where it is, and you're good. The pan axis, and the way you test this, you pick up the gimbal and you and what you do is you tilt it to the left or to the right, and as you can see, if it rolls in one direction, then you need to fix the pan axis. So what we'll do here is we'll just bring this back, and you can kind of tell the center of gravity of where the camera is. It's kind of like, you know, you got the lens, you have the camera body, you have the ND filter, so maybe it's like around here. So that part of the camera payload you want to be over the center of the gimbal. So kind of guessing, let's try around here, pick it up, tilt it to the left. Wow, I'm very good at this because I got lucky on the first try. You may have to fine tune it and like bring it forwards and backwards in like really small increments just to make sure it doesn't like spin just a little bit. Because what you ideally want is to be able to pick it up, tilt it all the way 90 degrees and it doesn't move. And then now you have a perfectly balanced gimbal. And as you can see here, that green logo there means we are all balanced. The RS Mini 3 has this great screen that shows you like the angles and how they're balanced and things like that. If anything's off, it would be red, but everything's in the center, so we're good. And now you have a fully balanced gimbal. Let's go! Gimbals are pretty sick, but you know what else is really sick is high quality original music by audio.com. Audio.com have actually sponsored a small segment of this video. Thank you guys, and I'm here to tell you guys a little bit about them and a new awesome thing they've got, which is called Audio Originals. Audio.com have partnered with artists to create music exclusively for Audio.com and Audio.com users so that you can have unique music that you can only find in one place, Audio.com. If you guys haven't heard already about them, I've spoken about them before in the past on my channel before, and the reason I like them a lot is because they have a very, very unique package, I guess you could call it, where you pay once and you have access for forever. It's a lifetime package. You have a $500 option, $499, and you can get 10% off with my link in the description below, where you get access for life. You never have to pay again, and they update their website with new music and sound effects, because that's part of the package too, every single day. insane. I don't know how they make money, but they do. Or they also have a yearly subscription, which is much cheaper. It's around like $199, and you can get the same thing, you know, music and sound effects all in one easy subscription, which is on a yearly thing. I think $200 a year is very competitive and a very good price as well for what you're getting. Audio Originals has awesome new music, and I've personally been enjoying them and using it all throughout this video, and I hope you guys have been enjoying it too. Thank you so much, Audio.com, for sponsoring this segment of this video. Now give me that. Step number 2, it's hand placement. Something I feel like people don't really talk about a lot when it comes to like, how do you use a gimbal in YouTube videos? So typically, I akin this to like a Steadicam, right? And a Steadicam, for those of you who don't know, it is this. And usually the way you use it is you'll have one hand like taking the weight of the whole rig, and the other hand is what you use to control the direction of the camera. But to do that effectively, they only use like their thumb and their index finger, because they don't want their whole hand touching what's turning the camera, because then you have more chances of like creating unnecessary movement or unintentional movement, and then, or like up and down movement, whatever. And then the shot is kind of ruined. It's, you know, it's not as good practice. So I'll use my non-dominant hand. I'm right-handed, so I'll use my left hand to take the weight of the whole gimbal, and then I'll use my right hand, middle finger, index finger, and thumb to control the direction of the camera and everything like that. And I feel like this gives me the smoothest results, so I would recommend that. Step number 3 is the ninja walk. This is an essential technique you need to learn in order to be a smooth, cinematic gimbal operator. We need to move smooth because we're trying to get smooth cinematic shots with our gimbal, but our gimbal can only do so much, and we do need to help it out a bit. So that is where the ninja walk comes in. Essentially, it's pretty simple. It just takes practice. You walk from heel to toe with every single step. So the back part of your foot, roll to the middle, then to your toes, lift off, and then onto the next foot. Obviously, you're kind of doing this as like a normal walk, like, you know, walk, guys, but you have to do it in the smooth motion of heel to toe. Instead of just doing your normal steps where you just step on your entire foot, one after the other, you create a smoother motion overall compared to just walking normally step by step. This one takes a lot of practice, so don't be upset if you don't get it straight away, but you know, just keep at it and you will see a difference compared to just normal walking, even if it is your first try. Okay, now you know how to use your gimbal, you know how to balance it, you know how to hold it, you know how to do the ninja walk. It's time to learn what kind of shots you can do with a gimbal that are cinematic and interesting to make your video pop. We have some that are very easy to do and quite simple, and others that are a bit more complex and will require a few tries. Let's start with the basics, the push in or the pull out. These are used all the time to either bring focus to something or show off the location that you're at. Key things you want to make sure you do with them is just keep your subject centered as much as possible. With all these shots, these aren't strict rules, but these are things you should try to do just to kind of pull them off a bit more smoothly. The orbit shot. This is where you go around your subject in an orbit. You know, you're orbiting your subject like the moon orbits the earth and things like that. And same with the push in, pull out. You want to keep your subject centered as much as possible. Again, you know, semi-firm rule, but it helps to make the effect look as good as possible. With this, it does take some practice. You need to make sure that your gimbal is keeping up with the positioning of your subject in the frame. So if you're going for a center frame subject, then you need to make sure that you are, you know, turning the gimbal enough so that it keeps up with your movement as well, or, you know, for whatever position you have it in. So this one will take some practice to get perfectly right, but definitely give it a go because it is one of my personal favorite moves to do. The tilt up or tilt down. Very, very straightforward. You're just bringing the viewer's attention to something that is either up or down. This can be used to show off like a location from a high up vantage point, or maybe you want to look up and look at the skyscrapers in the city. And these are just a couple of ways to do that. And last but not least, the 360 spin. Now this does depend on your gimbal because a lot of the older gimbals can't do it, but if you have any modern day gimbal from like the last few years, I'd say, you're probably good. It's probably a feature within the gimbal to do a 360 spin. It may be called something different. The big tip for this, which is kind of hard to do because it's spinning and you can't always see your screen, is you need to keep your subject centralized. Otherwise the effect just doesn't work. It looks too gimmicky. This is an effect I don't like to use too often because it was really interesting when it first came out just because it was so new and unique, but now it's so easy for it to become such a gimmicky type of shot that you either need to do it right or just don't do it at all. Now there are many other types of gimbal movements that you can do where maybe you combine some of these shots that I've mentioned, or you include subject movement and then you counter it with the gimbal movement and things like that. editing a higher angle or a lower angle, whatever it might be. So there's a lot you can do with a gimbal, and to make it cinematic, just, you know, try it all out, have fun with it, and shoot some awesome shit.